I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, sipping coffee and scrolling through my phone when the message came through. 1 year, 3 months, and 12 days since the divorce was finalized. Not that I was counting anymore. The notification lit up my screen. Her name. After months of silence. We really need to talk. This is urgent. Please. I stared at the message for a moment, then set my phone face down on the counter. The coffee suddenly tasted better. Something about that desperate please at the end told me everything I needed to know. She wanted something. Again. For those who don't know the backstory, my ex-wife spent the last 2 years of our marriage convincing me I was the problem. Every argument, every issue, somehow traced back to me not being attentive enough, not ambitious enough, not something enough. Meanwhile, she was spending more and more time with a colleague from her office, going to lunches that turned into dinners, texting him at all hours. When I brought it up, I was controlling. When I asked for boundaries, I was insecure. The final straw came when I found messages on her laptop, open for anyone to see. Nothing explicit, but the emotional intimacy was undeniable. They talked about everything. Their dreams, their frustrations, things she never discussed with me anymore. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to hide it. She said she needed someone who understood her on a deeper level. I filed for divorce the next week. She fought it at first, then tried to negotiate, then finally accepted it when she figured out I wasn't bluffing. The process took 8 months. 8 months of her alternating between trying to win me back and blaming me for giving up on us. By the time the papers were signed, I was exhausted but free. And now, over a year later, she needed to talk. Urgently. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I know you're upset with me, but this is important. Can we meet? Upset. That was rich. I wasn't upset. I was indifferent. And that was infinitely more powerful. I picked up my phone and typed a response, keeping it short and direct. Maybe another time. I'm currently on a date with your younger sister. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, then appeared again. I could practically feel the panic through the screen. Then nothing. The dots vanished and no message came through. I smiled despite myself. It wasn't a lie, technically. I had plans with Lydia that afternoon. Whether she wanted to call it a date or not was up to her, but I certainly wasn't opposed to the idea. Lydia was different from her older sister in every way that mattered. Where my ex-wife was manipulative, Lydia was straightforward. Where my ex demanded attention, Lydia offered genuine conversation. And most importantly, where my ex saw me as a project to fix, Lydia saw me as a person worth knowing. We'd started talking about 4 months after the divorce. She reached out through a mutual friend, said she wanted to apologize for her sister's behavior during the marriage. She'd witnessed some of the disrespect firsthand at family gatherings and felt terrible about not speaking up. That conversation turned into coffee, which turned into regular meetups, which turned into something I wasn't quite ready to define, but definitely wasn't willing to walk away from. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the morning. No more messages, no calls. Good. I finished my coffee, got dressed, and headed out to meet Lydia at the park like we'd planned. She was waiting on a bench near the fountain, wearing jeans and a light jacket, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger than her 28 years. When she saw me approaching, she smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't come with conditions attached. "Hey," she said, standing up to hug me briefly. "How's your morning going?" "Interesting," I said, sitting down next to her. "Your sister texted me." Her expression shifted slightly. Not surprise, more like resignation. "What did she want?" "To talk." "Said it was urgent." "And what did you say?" I pulled out my phone and showed her my response. She read it, then looked at me with a mixture of amusement and concern. "You told her we're on a date? Are we not?" She laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible. You know she's going to lose her mind, right? That's her problem, not mine." "Fair enough." She leaned back against the bench, looking out at the fountain. "Did she say what was urgent?" "Nope. Just that we needed to talk." Typical. Everything's always urgent with her when she needs something. Lydia paused, then glanced at me sideways. "You're not going to respond, are you?" "Not planning on it." "Good." She reached over and squeezed my hand briefly. She had her chance. She doesn't get to pull you back into her chaos just because it's convenient for her. That was exactly why I liked being around Lydia. She understood boundaries. She understood respect. She understood that some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. We spent the afternoon walking around the park, talking about everything and nothing. Work, hobbies, plans for the upcoming week. Normal stuff. The kind of conversations I'd missed during those last years of my marriage when every interaction felt like navigating a minefield. My phone buzzed a few times throughout the day. I ignored it. Whatever crisis my ex-wife was manufacturing could wait. Or better yet, it could resolve itself without me. It wasn't until later that evening, when I was back home, that I finally checked my messages. Nothing from her, which was surprising. But there was a text from Roger, a mutual friend who'd stayed neutral during the divorce. "Hey man, you might want to give me a call when you get a chance. Something's going on with your ex, and I think you should hear it from me first." I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely. Part of me knew that if Roger was reaching out, it was probably something I needed to know. I hit the call button. He picked up on the second ring. "Thanks for calling back," he said, his voice cautious. "Look, I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything, but I figured you'd want to know what's happening before it gets messy." "What's going on?" He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Your ex is pregnant, and apparently, the guy she was seeing bailed when he found out." The words hung in the air for a moment while my brain processed them. Pregnant. The guy bailed. And now she needed to talk. Urgently. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Of course. Of course this was why she was reaching out. Not because she missed me, not because she wanted to apologize, but because she needed something. "Again, you still there?" Roger asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "I'm here. I just thought you should know, in case she tries to. I don't know, get you involved somehow." "Appreciate the heads up." We talked for a few more minutes, but I barely heard what he was saying. My mind was already calculating how this was going to play out. She was going to try to manipulate me into feeling responsible somehow, or guilty, or sympathetic. But here's what she didn't understand. I'd spent a year rebuilding myself after she tore me down. I'd learned to recognize manipulation when I saw it, and I'd learned that the only person responsible for her choices was her. After I hung up with Roger, I sat in silence for a while, staring at my phone. Then I opened my messages and typed a response to my ex-wife's urgent request. "I heard about your situation. Congratulations on the pregnancy. Whatever you need to discuss, I'm not the person to help you with it. Best of luck with everything." Short, polite, final. I hit send and put my phone on silent for the rest of the night. She'd made her choices. Now she could handle the consequences. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. All from her family. Her mother, and had left 3 voicemails. Her older brother sent a text calling me selfish. Even her aunt, who I'd met exactly twice during the marriage, felt the need to weigh in on my character. I deleted them all without reading past the first line. What they didn't understand was that I'd already given years of my life trying to make someone happy who refused to be satisfied. I wasn't doing it again, especially not for someone who threw me away the moment she thought she found something better. My phone rang again. Lydia's name appeared on the screen. I answered. "Morning," I said. "Have you checked your messages today?" she asked, her tone somewhere between amused and concerned. Glanced at them. Nothing worth responding to. "My mother called me last night. Apparently, I'm a homewrecker now." There was no anger in her voice, just tired acceptance of her family's tendency toward drama. "You want to grab breakfast?" I asked. "Somewhere far from anyone who shares your last name." She laughed. "Absolutely. Give me 30 minutes. We met at a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with vinyl booths and coffee that came in endless refills. Lydia slid into the seat across from me, pulling her jacket off and tossing it beside her. "So," she said, folding her hands on the table, "my sister is apparently telling everyone that you're refusing to help her in her time of need. She's painting herself as the victim, naturally." "Shocking," I said, keeping my tone dry. The waitress came by to take our order. Coffee for both of us, eggs and toast for me, pancakes for her. When we were alone again, Lydia leaned forward slightly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. When did we become this?" She gestured between us. "Because I'm pretty sure my family thinks we've been sneaking around for months, but I'm still not entirely sure what we're doing." It was a fair question, one I've been asking myself for a while now. "You remember that coffee we had back in June?" I asked. "The apology coffee." "Yeah, you didn't have to do that. You didn't owe me anything. But you showed up anyway because you thought it was the right thing to do." I paused, trying to find the right words. "That meant something." Most people from your family spent the entire divorce acting like I was the villain. You were the only one who acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, your sister wasn't blameless. Lydia nodded slowly. She's always been good at making herself the center of attention. Growing up, everything revolved around her feelings, her problems, her needs. I learned early on to just stay quiet and out of the way. That's why you moved 3 hours away after college. Part of it. She picked up her coffee cup, wrapping both hands around it. I needed space to figure out who I was without being compared to her constantly. Turns out, I'm a lot more comfortable when I'm not competing for attention I don't even want. Our food arrived, and we ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. This was what I appreciated most about being around Lydia. There was no pressure to fill every moment with conversation. No unspoken expectations hovering between us. "So what's the plan?" she asked eventually. "Because you know she's not going to let this go quietly." "There's no plan. She's not my responsibility anymore." "And when she shows up at your door?" "She won't." Lydia raised an eyebrow. "You sound confident about that." "I am. Because showing up would require her to admit she needs me. And admitting she needs me would mean admitting she was wrong about everything else. Her pride won't allow it." "You've thought about this?" "I've had a year to think about it." She smiled slightly, shaking her head. "You're probably right. She'd rather suffer in silence than admit she made a mistake." "Exactly." My phone buzzed on the table. Another message from her brother. I declined the call without looking at it. "They're going to keep trying," Lydia said. "Let them. I've got nothing to say to any of them. Even if they ambush you somewhere. Especially then. I'm not interested in being guilted into someone else's problems." I looked at her directly. "And if this is too messy for you, I understand. Your family's going to make you choose sides eventually. They already have." I chose. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Look, my sister had something good and she destroyed it because she thought she deserved better. Then when better didn't work out, she expected you to be waiting around like a backup plan. That's not how people work. That's not how you treat someone you claim to care about. Your mom's going to be furious." "My mom's been furious at me for various reasons since I was 16. I'll survive." We finished breakfast and walked outside into the morning sun. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few cars scattered around. Lydia leaned against my truck, squinting up at me. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think you're handling this exactly right. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. Doesn't feel great when people are calling you selfish for doing it. Those people would call you selfish no matter what you did. If you helped, you'd be enabling her. If you don't help, you're heartless. You can't win with people who've already decided you're the bad guy." She was right. I'd learned that lesson the hard way during the divorce. No matter what I did, no matter how reasonable I tried to be, my ex-wife's version of events was the one her family believed. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we go about our day and let them exhaust themselves with their drama. Eventually, they'll find someone else to focus on. That's simple. That's simple." She stood up on her toes and kissed me on the cheek, then headed to her car. I watched her drive off, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Actual, genuine peace. My phone rang again as I climbed into my truck. Different number this time. I didn't recognize it, but I had a pretty good idea who was behind it. I let it ring through to voicemail. Whatever crisis was unfolding in her world, I wasn't a supporting character in that story anymore. I'd written my own ending a year ago when I signed those divorce papers. And this time, I was sticking to it. No second chances. No guilt trips. No going back. Some doors, once closed, were meant to stay that way. 3 days passed without any direct contact from my ex-wife. The family messages slowed down, then stopped completely. I figured they'd given up or found someone else to harass. Either way worked for me. I was at work on Wednesday afternoon when Roger called again. "You got a minute?" he asked. "Yeah, what's up?" "Your ex showed up at my place last night." I stopped what I was doing. "Why?" "She wanted me to convince you to talk to her. Said you're ignoring her calls and her family's calls, and she's running out of options." "Good." Roger sighed. "Look, man, I'm not saying you should help her. I'm just giving you a heads up that she's getting desperate. And desperate people do stupid things." "What kind of stupid things?" "She mentioned maybe coming by your work. Or your house." "She doesn't know where I live." "She knows where you work, though." He was right. I kept the same job through the divorce, mainly because I was good at it, and they paid me well enough. She knew the address, knew my schedule, knew exactly where to find me if she wanted to make a scene. "If she shows up, I'll handle it," I said. Just be careful. She was talking like you owe her something. I don't owe her anything. I know that. You know that. She's got a different version of reality going on. We hung up and I went back to work, but the conversation stuck with me. Part of me knew she'd eventually try to confront me directly. The other part had hoped she'd have enough self-respect to leave me alone. 2 days later, on Friday afternoon, I found out which part was right. I was walking to my truck in the parking lot when I saw her. She was leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my truck payment. Her hair was pulled back, makeup perfect, playing the part of someone who had everything together. But her eyes told a different story. "We need to talk," she said as I approached. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do." Her voice was firm, but I could hear the crack underneath. "You can't just ignore me forever." "I can, and I am." I stopped a few feet away from her, keeping my distance. "You need to move." "I'm leaving." 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. And I'm not giving it. Move. She didn't budge. "You're really going to be this cold? After everything we had ended when you decided someone else understood you better than I did. You made your choice. Now live with it." "That was different. I made a mistake." "You made a lot of mistakes. And now you're making another one by showing up here." Her composure started to slip. "I'm pregnant and alone. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means you're pregnant and alone. That's your situation, not mine. How can you be so heartless?" I almost laughed. "Heartless. That's what you're going with. The woman who spent 2 years telling me I wasn't good enough, who emotionally checked out of our marriage to get closer to someone else, who made me feel like I was crazy for noticing, is calling me heartless. I never cheated on you. You're right. You just did everything except the physical part and acted like that made it okay. Congratulations on your technicality." She flinched but recovered quickly. "I need help. The father wants nothing to do with us. My job is barely covering rent. I don't know what I'm going to do. Figure it out. Like I had to figure things out after you destroyed our marriage. I'm asking for basic human decency, and I'm giving it to you. I'm not yelling. I'm not insulting you. I'm just telling you the truth. You're not my problem anymore." "What about Lydia?" she said suddenly, changing tactics. "You really think dating my sister is appropriate? More appropriate than you texting your coworker about how unfulfilled you felt in our marriage while I was in the next room." Her face went red. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. You wanted out of our marriage. You got out. You wanted to explore your connection with someone else. You did that. Now you want me to rescue you from the consequences of your choices. That's not happening. I never said I wanted out. You didn't have to say it. You showed it every single day for 2 years." A car pulled into the parking lot, and the driver glanced over at us. She noticed and lowered her voice. "Can we please just go somewhere and talk about this like adults?" "We are talking like adults. I'm telling you no. Adults are allowed to say no. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference." I took a step closer. "Let me make this very clear so we don't have to do this again. I don't care what situation you're in. I don't care who left you. I don't care what you need. You are not my responsibility. You stopped being my responsibility the day you signed those divorce papers. Now move away from my truck before I call security." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes starting to water. For a second, I thought she might actually cry. But then something shifted in her expression. Anger replaced the tears. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "I doubt it. When you see me happy with someone else, when you see me figure this out without you, you're going to wish you'd been there. If that helps you sleep at night, believe whatever you want." She pushed off from the truck and walked past me without another word. I watched her get into a car I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from a friend, and drive away. My hands were shaking slightly as I unlocked the truck. Not from fear or anger, but from adrenaline. Confrontations like that took energy, even when you knew you were doing the right thing. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute, letting the moment pass. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Lydia. "Dinner tonight?" "I'll cook," she responded within seconds. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just want to see you." On my way, I started the truck and headed home, leaving the parking lot and everything that had just happened behind me. She tried one last manipulation, one last guilt trip, one last attempt to make me feel responsible for her choices. It didn't work, because somewhere along the way, I'd learned something valuable. You can care about someone's situation without being obligated to fix it. You can acknowledge someone's struggles without taking them on as your own. And most importantly, you can walk away from people who only value you when they need something. My ex-wife had her chance. She threw it away. Now she was learning what it meant to lose someone who actually gave a damn. That wasn't my problem to solve. It never was. Lydia showed up at my place around 7 that evening, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing that comfortable smile I'd grown to appreciate. She kicked off her shoes at the door and headed straight for the kitchen. "So," she said, hopping up to sit on the counter while I pulled ingredients from the fridge. "What happened today?" "Your sister ambushed me in the parking lot at work." She winced. "How bad was it?" "She wanted 5 minutes to talk." I told her no. She tried the guilt angle, the victim angle, then the threat angle when nothing else worked. "Threat angle?" Said I'd regret not helping her. That I'd wish I'd been there when she figures everything out without me. Lydia snorted. "That sounds exactly like something she'd say. Did it work? What do you think?" "I think you're here making dinner instead of driving over to her place with an apology, so I'm guessing no." I started chopping vegetables for the stir-fry. She kept saying I was being cruel. Heartless. Like basic boundaries are somehow a character flaw. That's her specialty. Making you feel guilty for not doing what she wants. Lydia paused, watching me work. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever feel bad? Like, not about the boundaries, but about the situation in general?" I thought about it while I heated oil in the pan. I feel bad that she's going through something difficult. I'm not a monster. But feeling bad about someone's situation doesn't mean I'm obligated to fix it. Especially when that person spent years making me feel worthless. Good answer. "You were testing me?" "Maybe a little." She grinned. "I needed to make sure you weren't one of those guys who talks tough, but secretly wants to play hero." "I'm too tired to play hero." "Been there, tried that, got divorced." She laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen in a way that felt right. Natural. We fell into an easy rhythm while I cooked, her telling me about her day at the hospital where she worked as a physical therapist, me listening and asking questions that actually mattered to her. This was what I'd missed during those last years of marriage. Simple conversations without hidden agendas. Someone who listened when you talked instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. We were halfway through dinner when my phone rang. Anne's name appeared on the screen. "Her mom," I said, showing Lydia the phone. "You going to answer?" "Should I?" Lydia shrugged. "Might as well get it over with." She's persistent. I answered and put it on speaker. "Hello. We need to discuss your behavior." Anne's voice was sharp, authoritative. The same tone she'd used during the marriage whenever she felt I wasn't treating her daughter properly. "There's nothing to discuss. You confronted my daughter in a parking lot and threatened to call security on her. That's harassment. She showed up at my workplace uninvited and refused to leave when asked. That's harassment." I responded appropriately. "She's carrying a child, and you treated her like a stranger." "She is a stranger. We've been divorced for over a year." "That doesn't erase history." "Actually, that's exactly what it does. The history is done. Filed away. Over." Anne's voice went cold. "You're dating her sister. Do you have any idea how that looks?" "Looks like I'm dating someone who treats me with respect. Your opinion on that doesn't concern me." Lydia should be ashamed of herself. Lydia leaned forward toward the phone. "Hi, Mom." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "You're there," and finally said. "I am. And before you start, I'm not ashamed of anything. I'm dating a good man who your other daughter treated terribly for years. The only thing I'm ashamed of is that I didn't speak up sooner about how she was acting. This is family betrayal. No, this is me choosing someone who actually deserves support instead of blindly defending someone who doesn't. Your sister needs help right now. Then help her. You're her mother. I'm sure between you and the rest of the family, you can figure something out. Leave him out of it. He was her husband. Was. Past tense. He's not anymore, and he doesn't owe her anything." I could hear Anne breathing heavily on the other end, processing what was clearly not the conversation she'd expected to have. "This isn't over," she said finally. "Yes, it is," I replied. "If anyone from your family contacts me again, shows up at my home, or shows up at my workplace, I'll file for a restraining order. I'm not joking, and I'm not bluffing. Leave me alone." I hung up before she could respond. Lydia looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Restraining order? You're serious about that?" "Absolutely. I'm done with this. They can be mad. They can think I'm terrible. They can tell everyone in town I'm the villain. I don't care. But they're not going to keep disrupting my life because their golden child made bad decisions. Mom's going to tell everyone I'm brainwashing you or something. Let her. People who know me won't believe it. People who don't know me don't matter. She smiled and reached across the table to take my hand. You know what? I think this is the first time I've ever seen you actually angry. Not frustrated, not tired. Genuinely angry. Does it bother you? Not even a little. It's about time someone in my family faced consequences for pushing people too far. We finished dinner and moved to the couch, putting on some mindless show neither of us were really watching. Lydia curled up next to me, her head on my shoulder, and for a while we just sat there in comfortable silence. Can I tell you something? She said eventually. Always. I'm glad she messed up. Not because I want her to suffer, but because it gave me a chance to get to know you. The actual you, not the version of you she complained about all the time. What version was that? Boring. Unambitious. Too focused on work. Never spontaneous enough. She shifted to look up at me. Turns out, you're none of those things. You're stable, which isn't boring. You're content, which isn't unambitious. And you show up when you say you will, which is worth more than spontaneity. That might be the nicest thing anyone's said to me in years. Then you've been around the wrong people. My phone buzzed with a text. Roger again. Your ex's mom called me asking if I could talk some sense into you. Told her you were making your own decisions, and she should respect that. She hung up on me. I showed the text to Lydia. They're going to keep trying different angles until they run out of people to call, she said. Let them. Eventually they'll get tired. And if they don't, then I follow through on the restraining order. I meant what I said. She nodded slowly. Good. You shouldn't have to keep defending yourself for having boundaries. We stayed up talking until late, about everything except her family. Work, travel plans, random memories from childhood, whether or not pineapple belonged on pizza. The kind of conversations that built foundations instead of just passing time. When she finally left around midnight, she kissed me at the door, not on the cheek this time. Thank you, she said. For what? For not being the person she said you were. For being exactly who you are. I watched her drive away, then locked the door and headed to bed. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. No calls, no texts, no emergencies that apparently only I could solve. Maybe they were finally getting the message. Or maybe this was just the calm before they tried something else. Either way, I'd handled worse. And if they wanted to test my boundaries again, they'd find out exactly how firm those boundaries were. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. This was one of them. 2 weeks went by without any contact. I started to think maybe they'd finally accepted reality. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I walked into my favorite coffee shop and found my ex-wife sitting at a corner table. She stood up when she saw me. Please, just hear me out. I should have walked out. But something in her expression stopped me. Not the manipulation I'd seen before. Something closer to defeat. 5 minutes, I said, not sitting down. Then I'm leaving. I'm not here to ask for help. She spoke quickly, like she'd rehearsed this. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how I treated you during the marriage. For the divorce. For showing up at your work. All of it. I waited. There had to be more. I spent the last year convincing myself that leaving was the right choice. That you were the problem. That I deserved better. She looked down at her hands. But watching you move on, seeing you with Lydia, it made me realize something. You weren't the problem. I was. Okay. That's it. Just okay. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we can be friends? That's not happening. I know. I just needed you to hear it. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yeah, I did. She flinched but nodded. Lydia's good for you. She sees what I couldn't. I hope you're happy. I am. Good. She picked up her bag. I won't bother you again. I promise. She walked past me toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, you were right about everything. I made my choices. Now I'm handling the consequences. Then she was gone. I ordered my coffee and sat down, processing what just happened. It wasn't closure exactly, more like acknowledgement. She'd finally admitted what I'd known all along. My phone buzzed. Lydia, breakfast this weekend? Absolutely, I typed back. I finished my coffee and headed to work. The conversation kept replaying in my mind, but it didn't change anything. An apology didn't erase years of disrespect. It didn't create an obligation. It was just words. Too little, too late. But at least now she knew where we stood. And more importantly, she knew where we'd always stand. Nowhere. I'd moved on. Built something new with someone who actually valued what I brought to the table. Someone who didn't need me to be different, better, or more. Just me. That was worth more than any apology could ever be. The past was done. Filed away. Over. And I was finally okay with that. 6 months later, Lydia and I were sitting on the back porch of my house, watching the sun set over the trees. She'd moved in 3 months ago, not because either of us felt rushed, but because it made sense. We worked. Simple as that. Roger texted me today. I said, my ex had the baby. A girl. Lydia looked over at me. How do you feel about that? Nothing, honestly. I hope the kid has a good life. But it's not connected to me in any way. That's healthy. Took me long enough to get here. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You know what I appreciate most about you? My cooking. She laughed. That too. But no, it's that you don't hold grudges. You just set boundaries and move on. No drama, no revenge plots, no trying to make her suffer. You just walked away. Holding grudges takes energy I don't have. I'd rather spend it on things that matter. Like what? Like this. You, me, figuring out what we're having for dinner. Such a romantic. You knew what you were getting into. She sat up and kissed me, smiling against my lips. Yeah, I did. My phone stayed silent. No desperate messages, no family ambushes, no emergencies that weren't actually emergencies. Just peace. We talked about getting married eventually. No rush, no pressure. Just something we both wanted when the time felt right. For now, this was enough. More than enough. I'd spent years in a marriage where I was never quite good enough. Always needing to be more or different or better. Now I was with someone who looked at me and saw exactly what she wanted. That was the difference. My ex-wife taught me what I wouldn't tolerate. Lydia taught me what I deserved. And I wasn't settling for anything less ever again. The sun dropped below the horizon and the evening air turned cool. Lydia stood up and held out her hand. Come on, let's make dinner. I took her hand and followed her inside, closing the door on the past and everything that came with it. Some chapters and so new ones can begin. This was mine, and it was exactly what I'd been looking for all along.